Alright, for the next lesson, you don't have a free write. You just have your essential question. Topic is prerequisite skills, meaning this is something that you learned in Algebra 1 that we are about to use quite a bit in geometry. So, a quadratic equation is an equation that's a little bit different than a single variable equation in that, or a linear equation, sorry, in that you'll see a squared next to the x. This is called a quadratic equation. Now, when you recognize that there's only one x squared in the equation, your goal is to essentially solve for x the way you normally would. You isolate your variable on one side and your whole number on the other. So, for example, we would subtract 2 from both sides of our equation. So we get x squared, this goes to 0, equals 38 minus 2, which is 36. So now we have x squared equals 36. X squared means what number times itself equals 36. This is a perfect square. If you recall, x squared equals 36. We know that the square root of 36 is 6. However, we also have to account for the fact that negative 6 times negative 6 is also 36, because a negative times a negative is a positive. So negative 6 times negative 6 is 36. So when we find what x is, we would write x is equal to a plus or a minus 6. Okay, let's try it again. So let's say that you have your whole number here, you have another whole number here. Our goal again is still to get x by itself. This time, to avoid negatives, I would add 33 to both sides of my equation. So I would get 36 equals x squared again. So the question is, what number squared gives me 36? So I take the opposite of a square and I square root 36 and x squared. So x again would be plus or minus 6. Now, let's say we're solving for x in an equation where they have 6 squared plus 8 squared. This is no different. Your first job is to combine like terms. First, we need to figure out what 6 squared is. We should know our perfect squares by now. 6 times 6 is 36, plus 8 times 8, which is 64. We can perform that operation of squaring a number. We cannot perform what x squared is. All we know up to that point is that x squared is x squared. That's the most we can do with that. Combining again, we have 36 plus 64. 36 and 64 should be 100. So we have that 100 equals x squared. So the question is, what number times itself will give me 100? So in order to do that, I take the opposite of x squared. And the way that I remember the opposite of x squared, if you look on your calculator, there's the square root on top of x squared. They're opposites. They're complete opposites of each other. So I would take the square root of 100 and I would get 10. Now we have to remember when you're solving for x that x could also be a negative 10, because negative 10 times negative 10 gives me a positive 100. So we have to account for the positive 10 and a negative 10. That would solve for x. Alright, now I'd like for you to try the next equation on your own. Pause the video to see if you get what I get. So it's just like this one, and you are going to get a decimal. I would like for you to round to the nearest hundredths. Or no, you could just do tenths, either one. And you will get x equals plus or minus 3.6. Now, you could just leave it as, since it's not a perfect square, you could just leave it as plus or minus square root of 13. Either way, you will have the right answer. Now, it gets a little bit trickier. If you notice that this one only has whole numbers and an x squared. Let's look at the equation that doesn't have only two different terms. We have one with x squared, we have one with 2x, and we have one with 4. Do you see the difference? There's no x by itself in this equation or this equation. So all we had to do was isolate x squared and take the square root of both sides. This one you need a calculator for. So the first step is to solve for 0. Get this equation to equal 0. So what we would do is subtract 4 from both sides. So on the left-hand side, we get x squared plus 2x minus 4. And that equals 4 minus 4, 0. And that's what we want. We're going to use the calculator. This left-hand side goes into y1. The right-hand side, which is 0, goes into y2. So you press y equals on your calculator. Let me write that down. Y equals. Press y equals on your calculator. The first half, x squared plus 2x. So here's x right here. Here's the squared button plus 2x minus 4. That goes in y1. Press enter. 0 goes in y2. And then you would graph it. You'll notice that the graph, there's a right-hand answer and there's a left-hand answer. Where this is called a parabola. Where this intersects the y-axis, there's an answer here and there's an answer here. So in order to figure out what each of those answers in is, you're going to press second, trace 5. So second, trace 5. And then you're going to move your there's a little toggle. You move that to the right until it's over here above the x-axis. So you would press enter 3 times to where it says, second, trace 5, enter, enter, enter. See where it says intersection x is 1.24. That's our first value. So x equals, we'll say 1.24. Then we have to get our negative value. That's over here. So we press second, trace 5 again. And toggle over to the negative answer. So it's above the x-axis on the negative side. So we would do second, trace 5. Oops. I think I got a little clicky happy. Okay. And then press enter 3 times. And you're going to get the intersection is negative 3.23 or negative 3.24. It actually rounded up. So these are your solutions for this quadratic equation. All right, we're going to try it one more time. So again, our job is to get this equation equal to 0. I have a lot of stuff going on here, so I need to get all of my variables and whole numbers on one side and 0 on the other. So I'm just going to start with adding x squared to both sides. So I get 2x plus 2x squareds equals 4 plus 4x. And then I'm going to subtract 4x from both sides. So 2x minus 4x is negative 2x plus 2x squared equals 4. And then I subtract 4 from both sides. And that will give me my 0. So I get negative 4 minus 2x plus 2x squared equals 0. Again, I go into y equals and clear out this one. I can keep the y2 as 0, but y1 I need to put in what it says, which I solve for 0. So it's negative 4 minus 2x plus 2x squared. I would press graph, and then you'll see how it goes through the x-axis at a positive and a negative. So I press second, trace, 5, and then enter, enter, enter. And this is my negative value. So x is negative 1. Now I have to do second, trace, 5, and I have to scroll over so that I'm on my positive axis, x-axis. So I want to be above that x-axis in the positive. So I press enter 3 times. And I should get a positive value. X is equal to 2. So I have a positive and a negative x value. Alright, so I would like for you to solve for x in this equation. Pause the video and see if you get what I get. You can round to the nearest hundredths or tenths. I'm going to do hundredths for one and tenths for the next. So go ahead and pause your video and see if you get the same thing as me. I got x equals 0.87, or if you had put 0.9, that's fine. And x equals negative 6.9. If you didn't get this and you're not sure why, go ahead and raise your hand and I'll be happy to help you.